every element in the music has to fit into this mold where it's familiar and then with just a touch of surprise. So the formula is kind of set them up, deliver, set them up, deliver, set them up, delay expectation, immediately deliver. And then that is in every element. It's in the melody, it's in the rhythm, it's in the structure. It kind of pervades all the way down. At the end of the day, when you listen to it, you don't want to notice that stuff. It's like lighting in a movie. If the lighting's bad, you notice it. This is stuff you don't want to notice. It's in the best pop songs, the songs that you can't stop listening to over and over, have this inner fractal structure. And it sounds maybe more complicated than it is, but I think when you get down to simplicity, there is a finer inner workings that is maybe sounds more complicated than it actually is.
Hello, weirdos. We are back with the Weird Music Podcast. Today we've got Mr. Luke Miller from Lotus. Luke, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Feeling like things are starting to turn the corner here. I got my vaccination and we got some shows booked at Red Rocks. Things are looking a lot better than they have in the past 12 months.
Oh yeah, springtime is here and Citrus is out, the new Lotus album. Luke played a huge part in the songwriting that went into this album. It touches on a bunch of different feels. It definitely has that, upbeat, dancey component to it. But as you really progress through the album, it really starts to build this sentimental feel. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to exploring all this here with you, Luke. So yeah, I got a couple jump off points for us to get talking. The first, Citrus. Like, did you as a band have some sort of like meaning or intention? Like, what really is this album to your band?
Well, it's kind of honestly just it was the leftover tracks from Free Swim. We recorded 18 songs during that session, and then 10 of those went on Free Swim that we thought kind of fit together the best. And then these 7 were left over, and then there's another one that we're kind of using as the launching off point for our next project. But I'm glad to hear that they do have a flow to them, because it was kind of just, what we didn't put on Free Swim, but we still thought was good material and we wanted to put out there. So I'm glad they do have a connective tissue.
And as I mentioned, Luke, you played a huge part, you told me, in writing many of these songs. I'd like to hear from you. You wake up in the morning, maybe you make your tea, you make your coffee. How do you mentally kind of lock into songwriting? Like, how do you approach writing these songs?
Over the years, I've kind of developed techniques that I can use to write much more efficiently than just improvising around. So for me, it's much more focused than just improvising around. Actually, I think the majority, I would say percentage wise, a very small portion of it is the actual kind of, I don't know what you would call it, the kind of the creation aspect. And then a gigantic portion is like an editing process. And whether that means like restructuring, trying to figure out, because sometimes you'll write something and like, okay, this is really good. And so immediately think, okay, this is like the chorus. But as you get into it, you write something that's even better. And then, you have to be able to mentally be flexible to switch the chorus to the verse or whatever. I don't know. It kind of takes moving those pieces around. To me, oftentimes that's more important than the initial creation of the melody or the rhythm.
You mentioned this editing process. I couldn't even imagine what it would be like, bringing an idea to your band and then having that evolve from there. That's probably a huge portion of that kind of evolution of the album, right? The songwriting.
Actually, we try to between Jesse and I, we try to make the song as finished as possible before we bring it to the band. And then there are always things that get improved once we bring it to the band. You kind of bring these little elements that we might have missed, get polished out. So I always feel like that's kind of um, you're kind of done with the chisel at that point and you're moving on to the polish, so that's when you work on the things like dynamics and what parts feel like they need to breathe more, what parts need to feel like they're more tight or whatever. So that's kind of like the final polishing element, but all the components are usually in place before that happens.
Coming back to Citrus here, we touched on this at the beginning of our conversation, the flow. It really does have a build to it. And the end really, it starts to sound just quite beautiful after this like dance party of the first couple songs. And that's kind of how a Lotus set goes in person. And with that being said, I'd like to ask you, so when I think of a lot of music that Lotus makes, there's really artistic repetition involved there. There's repeating melodies and riffs, almost a trance feel until it really kind of iterates on the repetitions to a certain climax, so to speak. But that's just me as a listener kind of hearing it on the outside in. I'd love to hear from you. Like, how does the concept of entrainment, entrancing through music to then build, is that almost like, is there a recipe to it? Could you kind of share any insight as a songwriter with that?
Well, yeah, this is something that I've thought about a whole hell of a lot, because I mean, that's, at the end of the day, that's what music is. It's repetition. That's what the brain wants. It wants something. There is a calculation to it. I think the brain wants 95 or so, maybe a little bit less, depending on the person, what it already knows, but it doesn't want to just be served, I don't know, gummy bears over and over. You want like a variety, but you don't want too much of a variety. So I think of it as a fractal. So every element in the music has to fit into this mold where it's familiar, and then with just a touch of surprise. So the formula is kind of set them up, deliver, set them up, deliver, set them up, delay expectation, immediately deliver. And then that is in every element. It's in the melody, it's in the rhythm, it's in the structure. It kind of pervades all the way down. It gets, at the end of the day, when you listen to it, you don't want to notice that stuff. It's like lighting in a movie. If the lighting's bad, you notice it. This is stuff you don't want to notice. It's in the best pop songs, the songs that you can't stop listening to over and over, have this inner fractal structure. And it sounds maybe more complicated than it is, but I think when you get down to simplicity, there is a finer inner workings that is maybe sounds more complicated than it actually is. But yeah, there is I don't know if I'm making sense here, but
yeah, it's like there's a very delicate balance between like comfort and excitement or newness. And if something's entirely just out there and never heard anything like that before, it might not feel like necessarily, I don't know, familiar in a way that it's not welcoming to a listener. And then it's almost like, you welcome in, and then you said like deliver. That was so cool.
Maybe I've thought about this too much, but like when you take this idea, it applies to, you can see it in all art forms. When you hear someone say something was ahead of its time, they're often just saying, well, this percentage of familiarity to newness was off to me, And I think you can see it in, you can see it in how plants grow. You can see it all around. I don't know. It's kind of my own like personal number 27 or something, but yeah, that's something I think about a lot.
Yeah, we all, like you said, we all experience that in some capacity, whether it's the consumption or creation of art. Mostly everyone who listens to this will probably be an artist in some form. And yeah, the next thing I'd like to ask you about, Luke, I'd like to bring our attention to summer dance, if I may. I'm in Ohio. Weird Music's based in Ohio. Love summer dance. Nelson Ledges is so beautiful. Is that something we can expect this August?
We are really hoping to be able to do at least something there. But we are at the mercy of, the Ohio event laws. So we don't have anything concrete yet, but that is something we are hoping to pull off if we can, for sure.
Good to hear. Good to hear. So now I have a couple other questions. They're not as related to Citrus, but definitely related to you as a musician. Is there something in your upbringing, in your development as a musical person, that kind of clicked you into being the type of musician that you are today?
A big thing was actually a lack of listening to popular music when I was growing up. I didn't. My parents didn't really have like a big record collection. They weren't really big music listeners. They were just busy kind of raising us five kids and trying to keep things afloat. And so I think that made me, when I really got into music in early high school, it kind of gave me a fresh pair of ears on just more music in general. So I was kind of a late comer to it in that sense, but I think that gave me a small advantage of I wasn't locked into these these patterns that I've seen other people, just like growing up, they listen to what everyone else listens to, and it kind of puts you in these channels. And I think not having that kind of was a little bit freeing and let me kind of develop my own tastes a little later on.
Interesting. So then you mentioned you were early in high school. What was it that kind of gave you that nudge into being a musician?
I'm not really sure. I can't really remember. I know I had been taking piano lessons since I was a kid, and I kind of like fell off of that. And then I just, we got a guitar from somewhere, and I just started messing around with it. And something about that guitar just clicked in my brain. And my parents got me a guitar for Christmas, and I just couldn't stop playing it.
Did you start out doing scales, like definitely not pop songs? It seems like what was that first couple of years like? I ask as a budding guitarist myself.
I was into like trying to learn how to play jazz, and I never got good at it, but I think it gave me a foundation for harmony and learning kind of the more like jazz vocabulary.
So I just mentioned, I'm a budding guitarist. So let me pick your brain for a minute on music theory from your perspective. So maybe you don't need to teach this how it would be in a textbook, but just the way you see it. So then you have like a rhythmic bed to a song, and then there's melody, words like harmony, these other things. How would you describe to maybe like a 7 or 8 year old what these things, rhythm, melody, harmony, what they mean, what they are, and how they relate?
I mean, melody is a string of single notes. Harmony is the vertical aspect, the notes as they interact together, and the rhythm is the time aspect. So then the only aspect you're missing is the timbral aspect, which is how things sound. So those are your 4 building blocks of music.
So you said timbre, how things sound. The rhythm is the timing. And then you mentioned the harmony was kind of vertically.
Yeah, how the notes interact, their relationships, and then melody is the horizontal aspect of it. So you got your four axes of music.
So you see it as like a almost like a 3-dimensional visual thing then.
Yeah.
Well, that's freaking cool.
I don't have synesthesia like some people do, but that's how, I kind of think of it that way.
Interesting.
There's, with a guitar, like you said, a lot of people just start off with scale. So you're only focusing on melody. And I think those other 4 components are as equally as important. But when you're holding a guitar, all you see is, your fingers going up and down. So you tend to focus on that, which is fine. That's how you get better at guitar. But if you ignore those other elements, the harmony, the timbre, the rhythm, maybe you'll be able to play a killer solo, but that doesn't mean that you can write a song. And if you can write a song, writing a song takes all those elements.
So diving deeper, we're speaking about the elements of the theory when writing songs, playing music. I want to ask you about tension and release. It's obvious from this conversation, you definitely see things almost through the lens of someone who's taken like psychology classes. Speaking about the psychology of the listener, why is tension release something that can be so profound as a music listener?
It's the journey. I think humans are programmed for stories for whatever reason. We're a social creature. We're not solitary beings. And so we latch onto these stories, and stories have kind of built humans. So that's why we have language. That's why we have movies. And I think it's a little less of a direct line to music, but I think that the tension and release element that you're mentioning is that hero's journey. As Joseph Campbell would put it, you got this, the hero starts here, he goes through this journey, and then he comes back, but the beginning and the end are slightly different. He goes through the journey and he ends up slightly here. So even if the music is exactly the same in the intro and the outro, you have that journey of tension and release that leads you there, and then you're slightly altered at the end of it. So I think that's why it is so satisfying. It's just built into the human brain.
Wow. That is so cool to hear. I'm like drooling to get back to live shows. Man. So
we try to, at least I write the set list, and I try to kind of create that journey. So we have the mini journeys within the songs and within the jams, but then also, the larger within the set list, try to kind of create that same kind of flow so we can get that arc going on many different levels, and it can kind of make a long show flow from beginning to end. And
it almost makes time like a scrunch a little bit.
Yeah. It doesn't always work out, but try to get better at it every show. And I don't know, that's kind of the whole game.
So I've only got a couple other things here I'd like to ask you. We did speak about you as an early musician, as a high school Luke. Is there anything that Luke in 2021, either musically or unrelated to music, like any kind of advice you'd give to that high school Luke?
Never buy a phone.
Not bad.
Invest in Tesla. I don't. I don't know. I when I'm meeting with younger people and they're kind of like figuring out, what they want to do, there are some people out there that are deciding if they want to pursue a path in music or not, and it's always hard. It's not an easy career. My kind of joke line is like it's like owning a small business, but people applaud when you come into work. But that's not always true. There's hard parts, and it's not always like the encore situation. It's a constant struggle. But I think the people that really succeed are the ones that can't be stopped. There's like an inner drive to be a musician, and those are the people that usually last in the industry. It doesn't really matter. Like I don't feel like I'm the most proficient musician on any instrument, but I have I think a work ethic that is maybe unmatched. I would say maybe that's more of my skill base is working hard and constantly wanting to improve, even if I'm not the best guitarist or best keyboardist. But I like to think of that I'm, at least a proficient composer at this point. And if you have that inner fire, don't let anyone stop you. But if you don't have that inner fire, you might want to pull the parachute cord earlier than later, because it can be a rough flame out.
That's amazing advice. What would you attribute that work ethic to? What keeps you motivated?
I've been doing some work helping out my dad recently, and I realized that, you know, he has the exact same thing. Like, he's in his mid 60s, but he just works like a mule. And so I think it's just something at a DNA level, but also just the way I was brought up. And my parents were very hard workers. And I think so. Some of it is nature and some of it is nurture.
Well, it absolutely pays off. You can hear it in any Lotus show, at least the ones I've been to. You can hear it in Citrus. You know, some of my favorite music. Luke, thank you for joining me here, sharing your insights, sharing that advice just now. This has been great, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I hope people check out Citrus. I know Lotus releases a lot of music, and maybe it makes the release of each one not as special as you know, a band that only releases an album every 5 years or something. But I hope people are still stoked that we're putting out new music, and they're checking it out and enjoying it.
Yeah. I mean, at least I can speak for myself. I know I will.
Awesome.
Well, thanks again, Luke.